Awesome. All right, welcome everyone. So where we're going to be kicking off today is at the very, very bottom of page 24. And we're in the chapter There is a Solution, which, man, it's a perfect and an exciting time to be in this book because at this point in particular, we're going to be really diving in to the nature of what our problem is. We're going to be talking about the solution, and then we're going to be speaking about how do we access it? How do I get the solution that is available on offer in 12-step, in whatever 12-step fellowship you're a part of? So very, very bottom of page 24. And it says, when this sort of thinking is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, he has probably placed himself beyond human aid, and unless locked up, may die or go permanently insane. Well, that's not a real happy note to start a big book study on, you guys. Like, oh boy, I hope that, I don't know if you're like me, but I'm like, oh, I hope that's not me. I hope I'm not one of those folks with those alcoholic tendencies. Do you know what I'm saying? Ooh. So let's find out. Let's find out if we are the people that are being described at the very bottom of page 24. And so we're going to do a little bouncing around just because I have ADHD and then y'all come along with me. That's how this seems to work. So when it says, when this sort of thinking is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies. Okay, well, first and foremost, we got to figure out, what does it mean to be a person with alcoholic tendencies? What does that mean? So let's take a big old bounce to page triple X. So welcome, page bottom of 24, and then very quickly, we're going to go to page triple X. XXX, and we're in the chapter, The Doctor's Opinion. And if you're having a hard time finding it, which the Roman numerals, fair enough, they're quite tricky. If you can find page 1, you just go back a page. You page 1, okay, and then back 1, and then it's triple X on the left-hand side. And I hope you all found it. I'm gonna have a pause. There'll be a pregnant pause. It's for me, it's for you, it's for all of us. We're enjoying the pause. All right, triple X. And so where we're looking is we're right below the 5 different types of drinkers. And it is the bottom full paragraph on page triple X. So it's describing, and Dr. Silkworth is describing all these types of drinkers. And then he's going to explain why none of those types matter. So it says all these and many others have one symptom in common. So this is the one symptom that somebody with alcoholic tendencies or addict tendencies or compulsive, whatever brings you to this study. Do you know what I'm saying? Those tendencies have one symptom in common. They cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving. So what's my experience? What is my experience when I take a drink? What is my experience when I take a drug? What is my experience when I engage in that compulsive behavior, whatever brings you to this all-inclusive study? Is my experience that once I start, there's something that sets off inside of me and I need more, and then I need more, and then I need more? Is my experience that I stop at 3 every single time, or is my experience more than often than not I drink myself into oblivion? More often than not, I drink myself into pain and suffering and consequences. I use drugs into the point where I am in pain and suffering and humiliation. And it says that this phenomenon, as we have suggested, may be the manifestation of an allergy. And in the 1930s, what we were talking about, an allergy was very simply an abnormal reaction, a reaction that happens to a smaller percentage of the population. Now, I know that you are all distinguished guests, fancy folk who cannot relate to me whatsoever. So I know I'm the only one that drank myself into wet pants. That I know nobody can relate to that, but I was not regularly a member of the Dry Pants Club. And all I will suggest is that if I'm drinking to wet pants, that is not a normal reaction to alcohol. It is by chance abnormal. And so that inability that I have to control the amount that I take once I start, that is the physical allergy. And it says it differentiates these people and sets them apart as a distinct entity. So if I have the allergy, I have the allergy. My experience is that more often than not, once I start, man, I can't stop. More often than not, I'm drinking and using until I'm out of ways and means to get more. I'm drinking until blackout, pass out consequences. Man, that is a sign I have this physical allergy. And it talks about it has never been by any treatment with which we are familiar permanently eradicated. The only relief we have to suggest is entire abstinence. So if I have the allergy, there's not a chance for me to go back and drink successfully or use successfully. If you're wondering what successful drinking looks like, it looks like both my shoes and dry pants. Every time. That's successful. Or so I've heard. I've never really approached that. You know what I mean? They don't drink themselves into a divorce. I don't know, just have a couple and enjoy the sports. Go sports. So is that my experience? That once I start, I don't have the ability to control it every single time. Now, some of us, that's looking a little familiar. It's looking a little like, oh, girl, you're calling me out. That is rude. I'm not doing it. The big book's doing it. But if you need to be mad at me, that's fine. I'll help you write inventory on me. So let's go back. Let's go back to the bottom paragraph of page 24. When this sort of thinking is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, it's looking like I got some of these alcoholic tendencies. It's looking like, man, I don't have the ability to control the amount that I take. Okay, but I don't want to be this beyond human aid sort of person. So what is the sort of thinking that we're talking about? And so let's pop up to the very top of page 24 in the italics. This is the sort of thinking that we're describing. It says, the fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, we do not know why, have lost the power of choice in drink. I do not have the ability to choose whether I will relapse. That is what we are talking about. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink. And so do I have any experiences like that? Do I know what it is like to say, that's it, I am never going to drink again, or I'm never going to use again, or I'm never going to, binge and purge again, or I'm never going to gamble again? Do I know what it is like to swear off and say, I'm not going to do it again, only to find myself doing it again? A day, a week, a month later, the thought comes to mind and I take a drink. The thought comes to mind, I take a drug. Is that my experience? And it's talking about the willpower that I have in all these other areas of my life. Because I'll let you guys know, I got some willpower. I've been told I got a ridiculous pain tolerance. Like, I can power through some stuff, but it does nothing against me taking the first drink. Some of you guys know that I joke about there's a time in my life that I was in incredible shape. That is not recently. Like, I mean, oh, girl, I had abs. And you guys know my abs not once led to abstinence. You know what I'm saying? I was ripped, but I kept getting ripped. You know what I mean? The discipline that I had to go for runs every single day, to do weight training every single day, to do circuit training, like the discipline that it took. Man, I am a disciplined person. I do incredibly well with routine. The sidebar of that is I'm also easily institutionalized. I'm like, oh, a routine. I love it. Thank you. But the takeaway is that idea that this willpower that I have in all these other areas of my life does nothing against that first drink, drug, hit, hoot, pill, relationship, whatever it is that brings me to this study. Is that my experience that I said I'm never going to do it again, and I find myself doing it again? And that is the sort of thinking. And that thinking looks like this time will be different. It looks like nobody will ever know. It looks like I just got to get it out of my system. It looks like, man, if you're feeling the way that I was feeling, you'd have to get drunk too. It looks like a thought that is on me that goes, take a drink, 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 take a drink until I do. It looks like I'm living my life, and all of a sudden I get a case of the suddenlies and I have a crack pipe in my mouth and I do not know how it happened. It looks like I'm going to kill myself anyway, so why don't I get drunk? Why don't I get high? Why don't I text that guy back? You know what I'm saying? That. Do I have any experiences with that? And if that is my experience, and I have that sort of thinking, and I've got that sort of drinking, which is to say, or using, or whatever brings you here, I've got those alcoholic tendencies. So if you're writing in your book today, at the bottom of page 24, when it says this sort of thinking, you can make a note that what we're specifically talking about is the mental obsession. And when it says it's fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, you can make a note in your book that what we're talking about is the physical allergy. If those two things are present, he has probably placed himself beyond human aid, and unless locked up, may go die or permanently insane. And that is my prognosis. And we can hold ourselves up to that experience, because I think, no, this was published in 1939. It doesn't apply to somebody like me. I'm the exception. Anyone here ever thought they were the exception? I mean, that's all of us. We all think, no, I'm not as bad as you, or I'm way worse than you. I'm finding anyway that this thing doesn't apply to me. But why I like to keep it as simple as our book makes it is because I cannot deny the truth that I have the allergy and I have the obsession. And if that is what I have, man, I am in trouble. But I can look at all the things that I tried to put between me and that first drink, all the human aids that I tried. And if none of them worked, and you're hanging out with me on a Monday night, I love you, so glad you're here, thank you for coming. Chances are you didn't have any other option. Do you know what I mean? If I had another option, we'd be out there doing this. So we can look at what are the human aids that I tried. Did I try rehab? I didn't try rehab. Detox. I tried psych wards. I tried hospitals. I tried emergency rooms. I tried therapists. I tried counselors. I clearly tried going to, not clearly lately, but there was a time in my life I tried going to the gym. I tried relationships. I tried getting out of that relationship, back in, back out. I tried the geographic. I tried these things. And I really tried these things. And they did not work. Is my experience that all the things that I tried failed me? And here I am. Because if that's my experience, man, I am beyond human aid. And I'm locked up, I may die or go permanently insane. It says these stark and ugly facts have been confirmed by legions, and that would be like armies. Just think like thousands of alcoholics throughout history. I just, the visual that comes to mind is almost like, like the lemmings, that like hundreds and thousands of people just walking off a cliff, to oblivion. That's what we're talking about. And it says, but for the grace of God, there would have been thousands more convincing demonstrations. And the demonstration we were talking about is the fatality and the futility and the hopelessness of this illness. Demonstrations. And we talk a lot about that word demonstration because I am called to be a demonstration of our solution. But if I have not found the solution, if I do not have the solution, I am guaranteed to be a demonstration of the hopelessness of this illness. And I'm about to go off that cliff. And it says, so many want to stop but cannot. And I can pause and I can ask myself, is that my experience, that I really wanted to not do it anymore? A lot of times, so many of us think, no, I must not have really wanted it because I didn't stay sober. But the truth is, man, if I wanted it, my desire, like that's this baffling feature of this thing. That my desire to stay sober has no effect. I want to stay sober. I need to stay sober. I have to stay sober, but it has no effect. That's the power of this illness. It goes on to say there is a solution, and it's in italics to point to its importance. There is a solution, and that's the title of this chapter, which is a message of hope. And I always want to emphasize there is a solution. We don't have many solutions. Now, that might seem a little close-minded, that might seem a little rigid, but I want to promise you that is good news. Because if we had as many solutions as there are alcoholics or drug addicts, I don't know if that would work. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if Rob's solution's going to work for me. And if I have alcoholism, if I have the illness as it's described in this book, I put down the bottle, I put down the pipe, I put down, I get sober. And it is a ticking time bomb before I inevitably relapse. Man, I don't have time to try 36 different solutions. I don't have time. I need something that works. And that's what we were also talking about, page 24 last week, that playing the tight to the end is not an effective solution. I need something that is effective 100% of the time. And that's what we have here. We have a solution that is effective, and it is a solution. And our solution in 12 steps is a spiritual awakening. And what's good about that is because we have one, we can replicate whether or not it works. We can try it. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I gotta see if this thing could work. But regardless of the place that I'm at, it is as equally important to emphasize the A as in a singular solution as there is to emphasize is. And I just had depends what your definition of is. That memory came to mind. That's not what we're talking about. What I mean is there is a solution, and that is important that I emphasize. There is a solution whether I'm new and I just got day one or just a couple hours or a couple days. There is a solution. There is a solution if I consider myself a chronic relapser. I'm in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out. Man, there is a solution. There's a solution if I've been around this thing for a little while, but the magic is gone. And I got those problems that are piling up. And I don't think you guys, I don't think your steps and your stupid meetings and you start getting a little aggressive because it's stupid. And the more I'm in pain I am, the more I think you're wrong. I don't think it'll help. You don't understand. My case is different. There is a solution. We have one. And it is available to each and every one of us. And that's what's important, is that it is available to everyone. I've been joking lately about the 3 hills that I die on. 2 of which are a little pedantic, but the hill that I die on is that you can recover. Yes, you can recover. There is no barrier. The only thing that is asked of me to recover, we're going to talk about in this paragraph. There is a solution, and it is available to us all. It goes on to say, almost none of us liked the self-searching, the leveling of our pride, the confession of shortcomings, which the process requires for its successful consummation. Do you know what that means? Because I didn't. That means almost none of us liked the steps. That means none of us came to the rooms and saw the steps on the wall or shared on a Zoom screen or on page 59 and thought, oh boy, that's a good idea. I can't wait to do that. I would love to write some inventory. That's my favorite thing. Oh, and sharing that inventory in addition to any deep, dark secrets with another person? Why, yes, I would love to. I've been waiting my whole life. You would like me to sit quietly for how long? A full 60 minutes? Got no issue with that. And a higher power take away my defects? Yeah, I definitely don't want to get in there and manage them. I love every part of that. Going out and making amends? That sounds delightful. Even to my ex. Oh boy, I can't wait. And helping others? Other alcoholics especially? Why, yes, they're known for being so kind and selfless and reasonable and punctual and not even the least bit selfish and self-centered. Boy, I can't wait. And the God that's spoken all throughout the thing, including prayer and meditation, why, no, I've got no issues with that. All of that sounds like a lovely idea. That is none of us. That is none of us when we get here. Nobody feels that way. I might think it's a good course of action, maybe for some of you, because I'm sitting there judging and I'm like, oh, yeah, you could use some inventory. But that is good news. That idea that none of us like the steps. Because so often we think willingness looks like that character I just described. Oh boy, I can't wait. That's what we think willingness is. Willingness looks like I don't want to do it. Willingness looks like I'm terrified. Willingness looks like I don't think it's a good idea. Willingness looks like I don't think it could possibly help me, and doing it anyway. And I find that is really the thrust of a lot of what I do in sponsorship. Is like, that's okay. I hear you that you're afraid. I hear you that you don't want to do it. I hear you that you're scared. That's okay. Let's do it anyway. And let's do it because we're shoulder to shoulder and I'm going to help you do it. But that's good news, because I often think that I got to wait for some magical moment to do the steps. Do you know what I mean? I think I gotta wait until I'm perfectly jazzercised to do them. The jazzercisation, that's not how we conjugate that word. That's not how we do it. Well, you're not gonna get jazzercised till you do it. The jazzercise comes after, not before. I gotta do the work to get jazzercised. I've never jazzercised before, right? So that's good news. I don't have to like the steps. I don't have to think the steps are gonna work for me. I don't have to think I'm worthy of the life that the steps could give me. I don't have to be not afraid of the steps. Man, I don't have to be like doing them for the right reasons. I can do them with terrible motives. Man, that's the power of this. What matters is that I do them. That's what matters. That's the takeaway. And so here's what opens me up to take a course of action that, let's be honest, when I look at it, it's like, oh, no, thank you. No, thank you. Do you have another option? And we'll talk about that here in a bit. And this is what gets somebody like me open to the idea of taking this course of action as outlined in this book. It says, but we saw that it really worked in others. I see the light on in your eyes. I see that you drank the way that I drank. You used the way that I used. You engaged in whatever brings you to this all-inclusive study the way that I did. That you felt the way that I felt. And there is a light in your eyes. There is a hope in your spirit. Man, that you are changed and transformed, and you have something that I don't have. And what is important about that is my responsibility to those that are new. To those that are new, those that are hurting, those that are suffering, my responsibility is to be a demonstration of this power, not to yell at anyone, not to beat somebody into submission. Man, if you don't want to do it, I'm not going to make you. That's not my job. My job is to be a demonstration of this power, to be an adequate presentation of what this program is, for it not to be an idea, but to be working in my life, a verb in my life. So that we saw that it really worked in others, and we had come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we had been living it. I had the privilege of doing a talk on Tradition 9 a couple days ago, and I love talking on some of those, like Tradition 8, Tradition 9. I'm like, oh, give me those ones. Give me the weird ones. I'm so here for that. And Tradition 9, man, there is a powerful line. It talks about, as it's outlined in the 12 and 12, that in Alcoholics Anonymous, the only disciplinarians that there are great love and great suffering. And my responsibility as a recovered alcoholic or a recovered addict or recovered whatever brings you to this study, my responsibility is great love. And great love is welcoming, and it is that kindness, and it is that fellowship. But deeper than that, it is that demonstration of this program. If you are hurting, let me have my hand and reach out to you and help you get well. That is great love. My job is not great suffering. That is the responsibility of alcoholism or addiction or codependency or compulsive gambling or compulsive overeating or anorexia or bulimia. That is the job of the illness, great suffering. And my job is great love. And what do I have to do? Oftentimes it's the illness has to take its course until I am beaten into a state of reasonableness. Now, I'm going to say something a little controversial, not all the way controversial, because I do still need you to like me. Haven't overcome that defect, but a little controversial. I don't believe that there is in such a thing as bottom. And here's why I know, shock and awe. Uh, but the reason I don't believe there is such a thing as bottom is how many times, and have we said, I have hit my rock bottom, only to drink again, only to use again? Have we watched people said, I've hit my bottom and gone out again? You see, what happens is I think I have to get to a place where it is low enough that I won't ever want to do it again, but that's not how this works. To have a step one experience is to know that I will relapse again. No matter how far down the scale I've gone, I will do it again if my illness is untreated. Here's my experience. What happens is alcoholism, addiction, whatever brings you to this study, it beats me into a state where that window of willingness opens, where I'm willing to take actions that I wasn't before willing to take. I'm willing to write that inventory. I'm willing to make that amends. I'm willing to ask a sponsor to help me. I'm willing to do it. And what I have found is if I take action while that window is open, enough action quickly and thoroughly, that window will stay open and that momentum will carry me through. But if I do not take that action, always, invariably, the window will close. And you know this to be true if you've been sponsoring others. You know what it's like to sit down with somebody and man, they are beaten and broken. And it's like, amazing. Let's go to work. And then the canceling and the rescheduling and the, no, I can't today. And no, I'm good. I'm just going to focus on that. And they're okay for a little bit. And then the relapse. We know that from experience, either our own experience or watching it in the lives of the people that we work with. There is a window, and that's why I'm a little intense when I work with people, because I know that window is doomed to close. And if you've been around a little bit and we don't have that firsthand experience with the window, have a look at an amends that you haven't made yet. You can watch that window happen there. You know what I mean? You go to a 9-step meeting or an 8-step meeting, and the speaker's just, man, and calling you out and didn't know you were there. You know, like, ooh, and you got the twisties and the resisties, and you get a little window, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to make that amend. And then you put it off a little, and the window closes. And that's what happens. And so that is why when I work with people, I encourage that, like, that intensity. Let's go hard, because like I said, it is a ticking time bomb. It is not a matter of if I relapse, it is a matter of when. And it is not about a magic time where I will hit a bottom so low that I won't want to drink again or I won't want to use again. It is about if I am willing to take an action that I wasn't, if I'm willing to take any action, even begrudgingly, let's go now, let's go hard. That's what we're talking about. So it says, but we saw that it really worked in others, and we had come to believe in the futility of hopelessness of life, the belief in the hopelessness and futility of life as we had been living it. When therefore we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved. And what we're talking about there is recovered, solved. We're not talking cured. Last week we went on a delightful, it might be subjective if you found it delightful or not. We went to page 84 and we were talking about the 10th step promises. Now we're not going to go on that tangent because that's a tangent too many. That's not true. We can't stop me going on tangents. Off we go. But I think it's not time efficient. So when we talk about the 10th step promises, what we're talking about is what it means to be recovered. The mental obsession is gone. It is removed from me as the result of the course of action that got me 4 through 9 to step 10 and continuing to take step 10. That is what we're talking about. So when it says, when therefore we were approached, and I want to point out, those who have recovered, it is our responsibility to make the approach, to get at minimum. I've been talking about this a lot lately, so I'm sorry if you're sick of it. At minimum, man, we get to show up on Zoom and we don't even have to wear pants. You know what I mean? I can 12-step in my underpants. I'm wearing pants. Camera up though, camera up if you're not wearing pants. But we get a 12-step without even getting dressed. You know what I mean? The bare minimum that I can do is get their number and reach out to them. My life depends on helping others, so I got to try and help them and reach out to them. So when we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved, that's what it means to be recovered. I am not cured of this thing. You see, if I stop taking the course of action that allows me to live in the state of grace that is the 10th step promises, if I stop taking this course of action, man, we're going to see how unrecovered I become. And eventually, before that, I'm going to be miserable and I'm going to suck and you're not going to want to be around me. But inevitably, that thought is going to return that says, Paige, this time will be different. Nobody will never know. You can go out for 3 drinks and that thought's going to come back. And I'm going to take that drink and that allergy, it's never been by any treatment with which you're familiar, permanently eradicated. So I take a drink, I take a drug, it sets off the allergy and I'm done. So, but that is what it means to be recovered, that I am in that state of grace that is contingent upon the actions that I have taken and the actions that I continue to take to allow a power beyond my understanding to work in my life. And it doesn't stay beyond my understanding. I'm going to be pedantic here. The word understand, I have a 1930s dictionary because I'm fun at parties. The word understand in my 1930s dictionary, it means to know through experience. This is a power that is beyond my understanding at page 25 before I have taken the actions. But at page 84, at page 85, at page 86, as I continue on, man, that becomes a power that I begin to know through experience. It goes on to say, when therefore we approached by those in whom the problem had been solved, there was nothing left for us but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. Now, the simple kit of spiritual tools is the 12 steps as outlined in this book. That is the simple kit of spiritual tools. Man, that is how I get well. That is how I recover. That is what we're talking about. Man, I forgot that I have to draw a picture today, and I was going to make it on Canva because we're going to see every time I try to draw this silly picture, we're not quite there yet. It looks awful. I promise I'm better at art than it looks like, but bear with me. We're going to have a stupid picture here in a second. It's like, I got to grab a Sharpie and everything. Alrighty. So there's nothing left for us but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. So I've got to lay the simple kit of spiritual tools at the feet of those who are new, who are suffering, who have not recovered. It is not my responsibility whether or not they pick them up, but it is my responsibility to be adept at those tools. If you are drowning and dying of this illness, it does no good if I'm like, girl, you need a lug wrench. I don't know how it works though. I need to be adept at taking my own inventory, making my own amends, having experienced my own experience with prayer and meditation, my own experience with this process so that I am able to help others. So of course, when we start, the reason we take the steps is because I've had options. And I got nothing better to do, so I better try that because I'm going to die if I don't. But after a while, we continue this way of life because I know that the people that God puts before me, their life depends on my ability to be adept at these tools, these 12 steps. So I better not natter on about how you need a lug wrench if I don't know how to use one. And in a literal sense, I don't quite know what a lug wrench does or what it looks like. So I might not know how to use one, but Rob you don't have to do this. Rob might put a picture in the chat, and if he does, and I know what it is, I'll be like, I don't know how to do that. But I think we'll find you don't have to do that. That's anywho. So we got to pick up the tools. And it says, we have found much of heaven, and we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence of which we had not even dreamed. I want to point out that fourth dimension of existence is a synonym for the spiritual awakening. That is what we're talking about. And we're talking about being rocketed into that fourth dimension. We're talking about some velocity, not take my time with the steps, not, man, there is something about people like us who are hanging out on a Monday night. You guys can let me know if this is true or not. I have lived my life by one rule and one rule only. If it feels good, do it. Do all of it. do so much of it, it burns my life to the ground, and I've shattered the fabric of all of my relationships and hopes and dreams. The exception to that being the 12 steps. That's like, oh, I don't want to go too crazy with that. I've really got to find some balance. No, I was not finding balance while I was carpet surfing for crack cocaine. I don't need balance here. And here's my rant about balance. And also like I got vertigo, so maybe it's just I got a weird resentment. Maybe it's I got spiritual vertigo and I'm not good at finding balance. But here's the thing about balance. Do you know anyone who's ever found it? You're always like, we gotta find balance. We gotta find balance. Never found it. You see, if I have not taken this course of action, man, I am in trouble. Like my situation is dire. It's fatal. We're going to talk about that here in a second. I don't have time to wait for balance. We've got triage. I've got to triage. This is a fatal condition. So, but if I dive in, man, I promise you will find a God-centered path. It doesn't look like balance because balance has, I always think of like a server, like in a restaurant, holding all the plates and trying to balance them. Well, that's got me at the center. And I know I ought not be at the center of my life. And instead, what I look is for being God-centered. And that's the difference for somebody like me. But I mean, I'm clearly the least balanced person I know. So don't take advice from me, you know. All right. So it says, we have found much of heaven and we have been rocketed. So what I need to do is I need to, like, with some velocity. The last time we saw the fourth dimension was in Bill's story on page 8, and it said catapulted. So which is different than trebuchet. The last time I did that, I had to put in a whole thing because Howard got mad at me. It's like they're very different, you know. But you know that from we got some mechanical engineering to like freaking rocket boosters. There is a tremendous sense of urgency. There is a need to take this course of action quickly and thoroughly. So rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence of which we have not even dreamed. Now that fourth dimension is the spiritual awakening. And we're going to see a description of what the fourth dimension looks like, which is to say what the spiritual awakening looks like in this next paragraph. But also one of the best descriptions for the fourth dimension of existence, I heard from an author. I listened to audiobooks. I don't read well anymore. Well, that's what I do. Okay. But I listened to audiobooks, and I was listening to a book by C.S. Lewis. And he was describing, he wrote The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, like the Narnia series. And I'm mentioning that in case you're like me and you're like, who is that? And then you just want to go and Google who that is and you stop listening. So I just wanted to point that out. And so he had a description of the spiritual experience. Or not the spiritual experience, the fourth dimension of existence. And I was listening to this book, and he's like, the fourth dimension. And I'm like, oh, I am familiar with that phrase. What are we talking about? And so how he described it is, so in the physical sense, we're all living in the third dimension of existence, 3D. We're in 3D. I got this little Sharpie, I got this little sticky note, and we got this little guy and his little smiley face. I am so sorry. I really meant to do a graphic and I forgot to get around to it. This little guy, handsome fella, isn't he? He's living in the second dimension. He's just circle and lines. And so we're in the third dimension. And so oh man, every time it's so bad. I promise I can draw better than this. Oh, every time I'm gonna do a little thing, boop, boop, boop. God, it looks so bad. I'm gonna do a graphic. I've been meaning to. So you see that beautiful, beautiful drawing, and you can clearly all tell that is a road. Ooh, would you look at that road and that great depth? I promise I want to show you some art that I've done. I am better than this, but this thing gets me every time. You can see like, oh, wow, what a great road page. Are you the next? Well, Picasso was a little more abstract. Are you the next Rembrandt? Absolutely with this thing. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And so we're able to see, bear with me with the metaphor, that this is a road. We're able to see the depth. But this little fella, my handsome fellow that's living in the second dimension, he's like, girl, what do you want about? All I see is a triangle. And that's what the fourth dimension is. We're able to see the world at a depth that we weren't able to see it before. And if you don't quite know what I mean by that, if you've ever heard, man, this is a bit of a thing, but sometimes it's like, oh, well, I've never had a burning bush moment. I'm like, girl, if you have not been enchanted by the presence of God in a tree, you are missing the frick out. You know what I mean? That is the best. Like to see the world and those things that might just, oh, it's a coincidence. To see them at a truly deeper level. Do you know what I mean? That depth. That's what we're talking about. To see the world at a depth that I have not been able to see it before. Now, so this next paragraph is a description of the spiritual awakening. This is what it looks like. It says the great fact, not maybe, not wish, not it could be, not keep coming back and maybe something will rub off. No, the great fact is just this and nothing less. We're not mincing words. Fact. And like, man, it's not like, oh, maybe. No, this and nothing less, that we have had deep and effective spiritual experiences. And that's what I needed. I needed something that would work at depth, root and branch. And I need something that is effective 100% of the time. Because just don't drink and go to meetings doesn't work. Play the tape to the end doesn't work. Think of the consequences doesn't work. Pick up the phone before you pick up a drug does not work. It does not work for somebody like me every single time. I need something that is effective. And the spiritual experience, the spiritual awakening, that is effective. And this is what it looks like, which has revolutionized our whole attitude. So it's a revolutionary change in my attitude, the way in which I show up and I see the world. See, I'm seeing it at depth toward our whole attitude toward life, toward our fellows, and towards God's universe. A revolutionary change in which I show up and I see life, I see you, I see the universe, revolutionarily different. And man, I can't get there from just thinking about it. We're just talking about it. We're sharing about it at meetings. Man, the only way that I can get there is I got to take this course of action. And it says the central fact of our lives today. Again, not an idea, not an over there sort of Santa Claus idea of God, but the central fact. At the very center of my being, a fact. And if this is not our experience, this is what we are aiming for. The central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty. We're not mincing words. Central fact, absolute certainty, great fact is just this, nothing less. Man, this is what we're after. This is what is available, not, the best we can hope for is the educational variety. No, the central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that our Creator, capital C, has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. So that this power has entered into my heart and from my heart into my life in a way which is indeed miraculous. Now, that is the first way to read that. The other way to read that is the idea that my Creator has entered into my heart and lives, as in lives within my heart in a way which is indeed miraculous. Either way, one of the places in which God can be found is within my heart. But I got to do some cleaning to clear away myself, my selfishness, my self-centeredness, to tap into that reality. And it says, He has commenced to accomplish those things for us which we could never do by ourselves. What could I never do by myself? Permanent, contented sobriety. I couldn't do that. Could any of you? I couldn't. I could put the bottle down. I could put the pipe down for a couple months. And I was not well. If anything, it was like, girl, take a drink, take the edge off. Gosh. You know what I mean? That was so out of reach. But also, here's my experience. My experience is that it is so much more than just not drinking that is available. that which I could never do by myself. That is what is available. Man, that's what's on offer. And this is a beautiful description of what the spiritual awakening is, a revolutionary way in which my attitude toward life, toward my fellows, and towards God's universe has changed. But also this idea that the central fact of my life is this power, and this power has entered into my heart and my life in a way which is indeed miraculous. The idea that this power is doing for me that which I could never do by myself. Man, that is what we're after, the spiritual awakening. It goes on to say, if you're seriously alcoholic as we were, and I do a big book bounce around on page 24, 25, and I usually kick it off with this bottom paragraph where I'm like, oh, I hope I'm not as seriously alcoholic as you guys were. Yikes. And I would do this thing, and I'm sure you lovely people would never do this. But I would come to a meeting like this, and I'd hear a jerk like me natter on. And I'd think, whoa, I'm way worse than that girl. This thing couldn't help me. And then I'd listen to somebody who's like, it looks like they got their life together, like Rob. And I'd think like, whoa, I would look for all the ways that I'm not like, you know what I mean? I would look for all the ways I didn't fit, didn't belong. Like I'm not as bad as Paige. I'm way worse than Rob. But it was those two questions on page 44. Or to go back to page 24, when this sort of thinking is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, the mental obsession is fully established with somebody who has the physical allergy. Man, that's me. And that is what makes me as seriously alcoholic as anyone else. It is not about the consequences. It is about lack of control, physical allergy, lack of choice, mental obsession. It says, if you're seriously alcoholic as we were, we believe that there is no middle of the road solution. Oh, man. I was hoping for a middle of the road solution. I don't know about you. I was looking for one. That sounded delightful. I was hoping I could do this like 12-step light, because I was hoping I had like a diet case of alcoholism or addiction. You know what I mean? Just a little bit. And I could do just a little bit, oh, I'm not as bad as you guys. I don't have to do all of it. Turns out I'm as seriously alcoholic as the rest of you. Who would have known? Everyone but me. I think I was the only one that was surprised by this news. That's also how you know that you got it. It's like, you're like, oh, everyone else has been telling us for years. And then it says, we were in a position where life was becoming impossible. Is that my experience? That I'm in that position where life was becoming impossible. It's just I couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't do it anymore drinking. I couldn't do it anymore sober. Man, that's one of those lines where I'm like, how did you know? And it says, and if we have passed into the region from which there is no return through human aid, uh-oh. Well, bottom of page 24, when this sort of thinking, mental obsession, is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, physical allergy, he has probably placed himself beyond human aid. That's me. I am that person beyond human aid. We had but two alternatives. I got two options. And you might think, girl, this is a little black and white. It is. It is the black and white predicament that I find myself in. It says two alternatives. One was to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could, and the other to accept spiritual help. And that's a tough choice. I mean, for people like us, if you were to hang out in front of like a Walmart, and you were to like ask people, like, hey, quick question, just trying to take a poll. Would you want to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of your intolerable situation, dying an alcoholic or drug addict or whatever death, and with all of that entails lost love, relationships, dignity, hopes, dreams, degradation, man, crossing lines in the sand you said you would never cross, or take a spiritual course of action as outlined in this book? You know what I'm saying? Did you know that normal folk will write some inventory if it was that dire? You know what I mean? But for us, we're like, hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. How much of an alcoholic death are we talking about here? You know what I mean? Like, how good will the blotting be? Are we gonna have a real good blotter that will blot out the consciousness of my intolerable situation? Can I get a couple good blackouts? Like, I was there thinking, like, okay, do you think I'm gonna, like, if I die quickly, that's fine. I'm good with that. Or am I going to have to live a long life living the way that I'm living it? Because that was intolerable. Now, here's the thing. If you were to go to hospice care, and the people who are on hospice care, if you were, and keep in mind, the rooms of 12 step is hospice. We are dealing with fatality. This is not, this is, we don't feel like it is a lot of times, but the reality is this is a fatal illness. People like us who have this illness, we don't survive it, especially without treatment. And the treatment, like, and we try a lot of options, but the reality is if I were to go to a hospice ward and I said, listen, there's a way for you to live, to thrive, and to not have to suffer. All you need to do is follow the directions as outlined in this book. Man, there wouldn't be a whole lot of hemming and hawing. A whole lot of, well, I don't know what I think about this higher power thing. You know what I mean? It would just be doing it. We would just do it. But there's something about our illness that avoids treatment. But here's the thing, if you're like me, and I see, man, the black and white reality, and I brought, this is black and white. It is black and white. Alcoholic death, spiritual way of life. Those are my only options if I have alcoholism. If I don't have alcoholism, I've got choices. There's a whole lot of stuff I can do. You know, I can go to the gym. I can go to a relationship. I can get out of that relationship. I can, I don't know. There's a whole lot of things I can do. But if I have this illness as it's outlined in this book, I have two options. Whether I think so or not, I have two options. I accept the spiritual health and I dive in with everything that is in me and work these 12 steps as a way of life, like my life depends on it, because it does. Or I will inevitably die of this illness one way or another. Those are my only options. Now, I also want to point out, I think there's got to be option C, because I'm looking for that middle of the road solution. I am looking for the half measures option. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, let me debate and let me see what I can get away with. But the reality, and this is important, if I have this illness as outlined in this book, if I do not actively and intentionally choose option A, which is to accept the help that is on offer, I have chosen option B. So if I do not choose to write that inventory quickly and thoroughly, if I do not choose to do that fifth step, if I do not choose to have my quiet hours 6 and 7, if I do not choose to make amends 10, 11, 12, if I do not choose that, as a way of life, I have chosen the alcoholic death. Whether I think so or not, whether I like it or not, whether I believe it or not, if I have this illness, to not choose is to choose. And that is the reality. Now, I talk about how this is black and white. But if you guys remembered in the, like, Wizard of Oz, you know, when Dorothy hits Oz and then opens the door and it goes to color, man, when I can accept the black and white reality of my situation, man, that door opens and I walk into a world of color. I get to see the world in a way that I never saw it before. If you're like me, you put down the drink, you put down the drug, you put down that compulsive behavior, and the world starts to get gray. And it gets grayer and grayer and grayer. So that thought comes, either take a drink, take a drug, or kill yourself. And it says, this we did because we honestly wanted to, and we're willing to make the effort. Nobody is going to make you do it. I'm codependent. I will drag people through, but if you don't want to do it, I won't make you do it. And if you're willing to do it, I mean, our life depends on helping you. And you know what? It honestly, I think that's a great place to stop. So why don't I leave it there early? Normally it's like right on time or late. Oh, we'll get off early. So I'll stop the recording there. And what I'll say is, man, if you haven't had this experience, let us help you find what we have found. Thank you, and I'll stop the recording.